The Galactic Council's grand chamber was a marvel of engineering, a swirling nexus of light and sound that spoke to the technological superiority of its creators. It loomed high above the surface of Chrysalin, a planet steeped in millennia of conquest and dominance. Representatives from dozens of species gathered there, their features varying from sleek carapaces to shimmering plumage. All eyes were fixed on the solitary figure standing at the center of the chamber. Commander Adrian Kane stood resolute, his sharp features betraying no hint of the storm brewing within him. Clad in a uniform that bore the insignia of Earth's fledgling interstellar fleet, he seemed almost insignificant in the vast hall. But Kane's steel-gray eyes met the gaze of the council with an unwavering determination that silenced the whispers rippling through the crowd. At the far end of the chamber, seated on a towering dais, Overlord Ureth rose. His emerald-scaled frame glistened under the chamber's glow, his elongated snout curling into what could only be described as disdain. "Human," Ureth began, his voice a deep, guttural growl that reverberated through the hall. "Your species has been permitted to exist in this galaxy under our mercy, yet you dare rise beyond your station. You dare grow too bold." The murmur of agreement from other council members, avian, insectoid, crystalline, echoed Ureth's sentiment. Kane stood silent, his posture rigid but his mind racing. Every instinct told him that any display of weakness here would seal humanity's fate. Ureth continued, his claws flexing in slow, deliberate motion. "The Council demands tribute, resources, technology, your planet's unwavering servitude. Failure to comply will not be tolerated." A low hiss followed the statement, a universal signal of derision and expectation. Kane let the silence stretch, his pulse steady despite the weight of billions of lives pressing on his shoulders. Finally, Kane took a single step forward, his voice calm but carrying the sharp edge of defiance. No, the word echoed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the chamber. For a moment, there was only stunned silence, as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. Then, the chamber erupted into chaos. Alien voices overlapped, a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. Ureth's eyes narrowed, his emerald gaze locking onto Kane as though he were a mere insect to be crushed. "Do you understand what you've just done?" "I understand perfectly," Kane replied, his tone unyielding. "Earth will not be a vassal to your council. We will not bow. We will not break." Admiral Phoenix, an insectoid being with mandibles clicking in agitation, leaned forward. "This is not bravery," it hissed, its multifaceted eyes gleaming. "This is suicide. You face a power that has crushed empires. Your defiance is insignificant." Kane held Phoenix's gaze, refusing to waver. Perhaps, or perhaps it is the beginning of something new. Humanity will not be cowed. High Arbiter Quellion, with its brilliant feathered crest, tilted its head in mock pity. "You will regret this arrogance, human. The Council does not forgive insults." "Neither do we," Kane said, his words a quiet challenge. The Overlord raised a hand, silencing the growing furor of the chamber. He leaned forward, his scaled lips curling into a grim smile. "Then let it be war." Kane inclined his head, acknowledging the declaration without a flicker of emotion. Turning on his heel, he strode out of the chamber, the murmur of alien voices fading behind him. As the door to his ship sealed behind him, Kane allowed himself a moment of stillness. The enormity of what had just transpired was not lost on him, but there was no room for regret. He activated the ship's communicator, his voice steady as he addressed the Terran defense fleet. "Prepare for immediate escalation. The Council will retaliate, and they will come in force. We must be ready." On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Admiral Marcus Voss listened to the transmission, his jaw tightening. Voss, a towering man with a weathered face and a commanding presence, had long suspected this day would come. He looked to Captain Elias Grant, a wiry strategist whose mind was as sharp as his tongue. "Well," Voss said grimly, "I suppose Kane just threw us into the fire." Grant smirked despite the tension. Wouldn't have it any other way. Back on Chrysalin, the council was already preparing. Overlord Eureth's claws tapped against his throne, his mind churning with the implications of humanity's defiance. They think they can stand against us, he growled to Admiral Phoenix. They will learn what it means to challenge the council. They are resourceful, Phoenix conceded, its mandibles clicking in irritation. But resourcefulness is no match for overwhelming force. The Overlord's grin widened, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Then let us show them the meaning of overwhelming force. As Kane's ship streaked back toward Earth, the stars stretched endlessly before him. In their cold, distant light, he saw the enormity of the struggle ahead. But he also saw hope, the indomitable spirit of humanity, unyielding even in the face of annihilation. For Earth, the line had been drawn. There would be no retreat, no surrender, only the fight to prove that humanity was more than the galaxy believed. And Kane would ensure that when the Council looked back on this day, they would remember the one word that changed everything: no. The room was alive with the glow of holographic displays and the low hum of conversation as Earth's highest-ranking military officers gathered in the war room beneath the Terran Defense Command. At the head of the table stood Admiral Marcus Voss, his presence commanding without effort. His scarred face bore the weight of countless battles, and his voice carried an edge that demanded attention. "We have one chance," Voss began, gesturing to the sprawling projection of Earth's defenses hovering in the center of the room. "One chance to make them think twice before trying to crush us." The officers around him exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of determination and unease. Among them was Captain Elias Grant, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if measuring each man's resolve. Grant leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "The Council's fleet outmatches us in every measurable way," he said bluntly. "Firepower, numbers, experience. If this were a chess match, we'd already be checkmated. And yet," Admiral Voss countered, "it's not a chess match. It's a fight. And humans? We don't play by the rules." In the corner of the room, Lieutenant Victor Sloan stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the holographic fleet. Sloan's reputation preceded him, an ace pilot with instincts that bordered on the uncanny. He was the kind of man who thrived under pressure, though even he felt the weight of what lay ahead. "They'll be expecting us to defend Earth," he said, his voice calm but charged with purpose. "We need to hit them first, hard enough to make them second-guess their arrogance." Voss nodded. "Agreed, but we can't risk open confrontation. We don't have the numbers for that." He turned to Grant. "How soon can we deploy the EMP weapon?" Grant hesitated, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. "It's untested on this scale. We could knock out an entire fleet systems, sure, but the pulse would also cripple anything in low Earth orbit. That includes our own satellites. Collateral damage is a price we'll have to pay," Voss said firmly. "If we don't act, there won't be an Earth left to defend." The room fell into a brief silence, the gravity of the situation sinking in. It was Kane who finally broke it, his voice steady as he addressed the group from the far side of the table. He had returned from the council chamber only hours earlier, his presence a reminder of the spark that had ignited the coming storm. "Every action we take now will define humanity's place in the galaxy," Kane said. His eyes moved across the room, meeting each officer's gaze. "The Council believes we're nothing more than upstarts, a minor species to be subdued. We have to show them they're wrong, not just through strength, but through resilience." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a call to arms. Voss was the first to respond, his lips curving into a grim smile. "Well then," he said, "let's make them regret underestimating us." The meeting broke, officers dispersing to prepare for what was to come. Sloan lingered, studying the holographic fleet with a distant expression. Grant approached him, his tone unusually light. "You look like a man with something on his mind." Sloan smirked faintly, but didn't look away. "Just thinking about the pilots I'll be leading into this fight. Most of them have never seen combat on this scale. Hell, I've never faced anything like this. Grant clapped a hand on his shoulder. You'll figure it out. You always do. As the fleet prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Kane took a moment to reflect in the solitude of his quarters. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on him, but there was no room for doubt. His defiance had set this chain of events in motion, and he would see it through. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, signaling an incoming message. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Voss. "We've received reports of an advanced fleet approaching Earth's outer defenses," Voss said without preamble. "A show of force, no doubt. They want to intimidate us." Kane's jaw tightened. "And we'll show them it won't work." Moments later, alarms blared throughout the Terran defense fleet. On board the Resolute, Sloan sprinted to the hangar where rows of sleek fighter craft awaited. His squadron gathered around him, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "Listen up," Sloan said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The Council thinks they can scare us into submission. It's our job to prove them wrong. Stick to your training, watch each other's backs, and remember, this is our home. We don't back down." The pilots nodded, their resolve hardening as they climbed into their fighters. Engines roared to life, and within moments, the squadron launched into the void of space. The first wave of the Council's fleet appeared on the horizon, massive ships bristling with weaponry. Sloan's squadron darted through the battlefield, their maneuvers precise and unpredictable. The dogfight that followed was a blur of energy beams and explosions. Humanity's fighters using their agility and ingenuity to outmaneuver the Council's superior numbers. In the heart of the chaos, Sloan found himself locked in a deadly dance with a Council ace, the alien ship outclassing his in every way. But where the alien relied on brute force, Sloan relied on instinct. With a sudden burst of speed, he maneuvered behind the enemy and unleashed a volley of missiles, the explosion lighting up the battlefield. Back on the Resolute, Grant monitored the battle with a mixture of pride and trepidation. "They're holding their own," he said, though his tone betrayed his concern. "For now," Voss replied. "But this is just the beginning." As the Council's advanced fleet began to retreat, the Terran defense fleet regrouped, battered but unbroken. Sloan returned to the hangar, his fighters scorched but functional. His squadron gathered around him, their exhaustion tempered by the spark of victory. "We sent a message today," Sloan said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "But the real fight is still ahead." Kane watched the aftermath from the Resolute's bridge, his expression unreadable. The Council had made its move, and humanity had survived the first blow. But he knew the full weight of their wrath was yet to come. As Earth's defenders regrouped and prepared for the inevitable escalation, one thing was clear. Humanity would not go quietly. They had drawn a line in the stars, and they would hold it at any cost. The war had begun, and there was no turning back. The void of space burned with the afterglow of countless battles. Wreckage drifted aimlessly, the shattered remains of the Council's once imposing fleet mingling with the debris of humanity's sacrifices. On board the Resolute, Admiral Marcus Voss stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the edge of the command console as he surveyed the carnage. The final battle was near. All of Earth's gambles, every ounce of defiance, had led to this moment. "Status report," Voss commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of duty. "Shields are holding at 30%, Captain Elias Grant replied, his usually sharp tone softened by exhaustion. "We've lost the Indomitable and half our forward squadrons. The EMP strike destabilized their fleet, but the reinforcements keep coming. They're relentless." Voss exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. The Council's flagship, a behemoth of gleaming obsidian and pulsating energy, loomed at the heart of their formation. It was their final obstacle, the embodiment of the Council's arrogance and supremacy. Destroy it, and humanity would do more than win the battle. They would prove they belonged among the stars. "They're throwing everything at us," Kane said as he entered the bridge, his face set in stone. He had traded his formal uniform for combat gear. The grime of battle streaked across his brow. "We need to end this now." Voss turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Suggestions?" Kane's eyes burned with determination. "We strike at their flagship, take out their command structure, and the rest of the fleet will fall apart." Grant's brows furrowed. "That thing's got enough firepower to wipe out our entire fleet in one volley. Getting close is suicide." "Not if we distract them," Kane countered. "We launch a coordinated assault, fighters, drones, everything we've got. While they're focused on the chaos, we slip a strike team on board and disable it from within." The room fell silent as the officers processed the audacity of the plan. It was reckless, desperate, and their only real shot. Voss finally nodded. "Make it happen." Within minutes, the fleet mobilized. Fighters screamed through the darkness, weaving through enemy fire as drones swarmed the Council's defenses. Lieutenant Victor Sloan led the charge, his squadron carving a path through the chaos with surgical precision. "This is it," Sloan called to his team. "Stay sharp and watch your six. We're not losing anyone today." On board the Resolute, Kane and a hand-picked team of operatives prepared for their mission. Clad in exosuits designed for boarding operations, they checked their weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. Among them was Sergeant Connor Riker, a grizzled veteran whose calm demeanor belied a lifetime of scars. "Just like old times, huh?" Riker said with a faint smirk as he loaded his rifle. Kane gave a brief nod. "Except this time, the stakes are everything." The shuttle carrying the strike team launched from the Resolute, slipping through the chaos of battle as the fleet provided cover. The Council's flagship loomed larger with every passing second, its hull a fortress of dark metal and glowing veins of energy. "Approaching the docking bay," the pilot announced, his voice tight with focus. "Brace for impact." The shuttle shuddered as it latched onto the flagship's hull. The boarding hatch hissed open, and the team moved with precision, weapons raised. The corridors of the alien vessel were a labyrinth of shimmering metal and pulsating light, the air thick with an oppressive hum. Kane led the way, his every sense on high alert. The Council's forces were quick to respond, alien soldiers pouring into the corridors with weapons blazing. The Terran team fought with ruthless efficiency, their training and determination outweighing the enemy's superior numbers. "Keep moving," Kane barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The reactor's our target. We shut it down, and this ship is done." The team pressed forward, carving a bloody path through the flagship's interior. Riker stayed close to Kane, his rifle spitting fire as he covered their advance. "This place is a damn maze," he muttered. "You sure we're going the right way?" "We don't have time for doubts," Kane replied. "Trust the intel." Finally, they reached the reactor chamber, a massive, glowing core of energy that pulsed with a rhythmic thrum. It was a marvel of alien engineering, its power far beyond anything humanity could replicate. "Plant the charges," Kane ordered. Riker and another operative moved swiftly, attaching explosive devices to the reactor stabilizers. As they worked, the chamber trembled, the sound of approaching reinforcements echoing through the corridors. "We've got company," Riker warned, his weapon trained on the entrance. Kane stood his ground, his rifle steady as he covered the operatives. The first wave of enemy soldiers burst into the chamber, their weapons blazing. The Terrans fought back with everything they had, the room erupting into chaos. Charges set. Riker called out, "Fall back!" Kane shouted. The team retreated under heavy fire, making their way back to the shuttle as the timer on the explosives ticked down. The corridors seemed endless, each turn revealing more enemies, but the Terrans pressed on, their determination unshakable. As they reached the docking bay, the ship shuddered violently. The explosives had detonated, the reactor's destruction sending a cascade of energy surging through the flagship. Alarms blared, and the vessel began to collapse in on itself. "Go, go, go!" Kane yelled as the team boarded the shuttle. The pilot wasted no time, launching the craft back into the chaos of battle. Behind them, the Council's flagship erupted in a blinding explosion, the shockwave rippling through the battlefield. On the bridge of the Resolute, Voss watched as the enemy fleet faltered. Without their flagship to command them, the Council's forces splintered, their cohesion unraveling. "Signal the fleet," Voss ordered. "Press the attack. Drive them out." Humanity's ships surged forward, capitalizing on the enemy's disarray. Sloane's squadron led the charge, their precision strikes crippling the remaining Council vessels. By the time the dust settled, the Council's fleet was in full retreat, the remnants scattering into the void. The Terran defense fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. On board the Resolute, the bridge erupted into cheers, but Kane's expression remained solemn as he stepped onto the deck. He locked eyes with Voss, the unspoken understanding between them heavy with the cost of their triumph. "We won," Voss said, his voice quiet. "For now," Kane replied. "But they'll be back." Voss nodded. "Then we'll be ready." As Earth's defenders turned their attention to rebuilding and fortifying, one truth became undeniable. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. They had faced annihilation and emerged victorious, proving that no force, no council, could crush their spirit. But even in triumph, the stars whispered of challenges yet to come, and humanity stood ready to face them.